evening. I'd like to call the January 28th, 2020 regular City Council meeting to order. Deputy City Clerk, I have a roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor Brown.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa.
Here.
Councilmember Wright. Meyer.
Here.
Councilmember Percival.
Here.
And for the record, Councilmember Wright is absent.
Okay, we have a motion to excuse Councilmember Wright.
Yes. Second.
Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Tonight, our Interfaith Council representative, Mary Rysdale, will join us up here for Interfaith Council invocation. Please rise. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Carly Meyer.
Thank you. It is not typical that I say amen at the end of the prayer, but please feel comfortable to do so yourselves. Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide thy steps by the light of thy knowledge, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord.
Salute to the American flag. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, the City Attorney closed session report. We did have a closed session meeting earlier this evening, so we get a report out.
Mayor, as I reported out in full at the 5 o'clock session, the council did complete all 3 items listed on the closed session calendar, and there was no reportable action on any of those items. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 5 is communications from the public. Anyone who wishes to speak during public comment on a particular item will be required to fill out a speaker slip, and these speaker slips must be turned in to our city clerk. Each request will cover 1 speaker. Those who wish to speak must submit their own request to be called on. There's a 3-minute per person time limit for all comments, including public or quasi-judicial hearings. The written comments on any item may also be submitted. However, they will not be read aloud by the city clerk. All who wish to speak, including council members and staff, need to be recognized by the mayor before speaking. Members of the public shall comply with adopted rules of decorum, Resolution 4545, a copy of which can be requested through the city clerk's office. So just a reminder to please turn off or mute your cell phone while the meeting is in session. Deputy City Clerk, do we have any speaker requests?
Yes, there's 1 request to speak from Isel Santoyo.
Okay.
Thank you. So my name is Yesel Santoyo, and I am talking about my nonprofit organization called the Give Foundation. This is a foundation mostly for kids with cystic fibrosis. If you guys don't know what cystic fibrosis is, it's basically a genetic disorder that affects mostly the lungs, and it is terminal. There's no cure up to date for that. So basically, my goal is to get toys donated from schools and around the city, so I can go ahead and donate it to, I have actually a couple hospitals that I've already spoken to. I have the Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego. I have the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, and I also have the Loma Linda Children's Hospital that currently have children there living with cystic fibrosis. Basically, I've already spoken to a few schools, principals, and they've agreed to go ahead and do a cystic awareness, a whole week for it, maybe do a toy drive. I just wanted to get the okay from you guys to hopefully spread the word about cystic fibrosis, because, I mean, we hear a lot about suicide prevention. We hear a lot about domestic violence, but I don't really hear in this town about cystic fibrosis. And I feel like that's a really, really big disorder that a lot of people have to go through, and they don't bring awareness to that. So I was just hoping we can go ahead and do a toy drive, hopefully just setting up a place out in the library or at the fire station, police station, and getting toys donated. So I'm not sure where we could go from here, but I just wanted to take the time and address my foundation. It's nonprofit.
Thank you very much for that information, and since it's not an agendized item, the council can't take any action, but we can ask that you meet with the staff representative. Boy, I just brushed my teeth, can't do a thing with them.
It's okay, I have braces, so I can't talk either.
The city manager or one of his staff can talk to you about outreach options.
Okay, I left my email and also my phone number, so it's easy for you guys. Okay, thank you.
Very much. Okay, item 6, presentations. We have none this evening. So item 7, receive and file. These are generally acted on in one motion. So do I have a motion on 7A to receive and file?
So moved. Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. On to item 8, which is our consent calendar. Consent calendar items will be acted upon in a single action of the City Council unless otherwise requested by an individual council member for separate consideration. Are there any members of council that would like to pull a consent item for separate discussion? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that we accept the consent calendar as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve. Carly, second by Linda. Thank you. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Item 10A, action items. So the first item is an ordinance amending section 70-224 of Article 8, security improvements of Chapter 70, subdivisions of the Hemet Municipal Code relating to cities' acceptance of lien agreements as securities for subdivision improvement agreements. And this is up for first reading. And we have a staff report.
So before we get started, Steve, our city engineer, is pulling up the item. Before we get started, we had our financial model presentation earlier today. So we talked about revenues, how we generate funding for the city. So this opportunity right here is largely a result of some of the conversations we've had with some of our developers. And so Steve Larissa will be providing this item to the council and to the community. But I do want to make sure that, I give credit to the city attorney team as well as engineering as well as everyone else that was involved to bring this forward to the council. So, Steve?
Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. As you can see here, this item is to discuss the lien agreements as a security for subdivision improvement agreements. I'll go into just a little bit of background on that. There's three main things just to help give you some background. So there's a subdivision improvement agreement. This is required of the land developers when they are getting ready to have a map approved by council. They have to enter into this agreement with the city to ensure that they are going to take care of the infrastructure improvements that are required as part of the development. The securities that are mentioned in there, it's in the form of whatever the city approves, as well as what's in the Subdivision Map Act, the SMA in there. And currently in the city's municipal code, the acceptable securities are bonds, letters of credit, or cash deposit. Before I go into this a little more detail, the reason why this is before you tonight is to help the idea of spurring and encouraging development to continue moving forward. As I mentioned, as you can see up here, the land development has been lagging in the region. And some of it hasn't recovered yet from the Great Recession of 2008. And they're experiencing, the land developers themselves are experiencing difficulty in obtaining some of the security for their projects. And as I mentioned before in the slide just previously, the security is in order to make sure that they are going to complete the improvements, infrastructure improvements of street, storm drain, water, and so on. Another reason why this is important for the city to consider is that there's a lot of large vacant parcels throughout the city. And some of these are older farms or places that aren't doing any of the farming anymore. These landowners that end up trying to work with the developers don't have the wherewithal to end up putting forth the several $1 million worth of bonds to do that. So the proposed ordinance is kind of paraphrased here, but just to give you the background too on that. So there are other agencies that do this, Riverside County being one of them. They have this as in their ordinance for the land development, Ordinance 460. In addition, the city of Victorville was successful in implementing this back in 2017 because they did experience a lot of parcels that went under from the Great Recession. What this is going to do is modify the current section 70-224 of the municipal code. This was worked out, as the city manager, Mr. Lopez, had mentioned. This was worked on together with the city attorney's office to make sure that we had it nailed down pretty well. But what this is going to do is the primary thing is going to add the lien agreements as a viable security for developments. Now, I know, as we pointed out in the staff report too, there are risks with this, with the ordinance, but I think by working through this with the city attorney's office, we've mitigated those through a couple of different items. The lien will be attached to the property, and pretty much as it states there, priority of a judgment lien or in the first position. So that way, there won't be any additional liens in front of that, or else this won't be allowed to be done. The lien is only in place for 3 years. It could be extended for up to additional 3 years for a total of 6 years. But there's quite a bit of things that they'd have to go through in order to make sure that happens. And then basically it stops after 6 years. The other thing that protects the city up front and in the long run is a deposit that would have to be provided, a cash deposit would have to be provided to the city. Now, in some agencies, they're anywhere from $12,000 to $20,000, but it's left in the agreement that it is up to the city as it is determined by time to time by resolution. And this cash deposit is for reverting the property to acreage, or basically undoing the subdivision. So if it's presented to the council, the map is presented to the council with the subdivision agreement, with the lien, they come through, and in 3 years, nothing can happen. They just can't get it done. They apply for an extension. By the way, they had this cash deposit on hand with the city at that time. They go for another 3 years, a total of 6 years, nothing can happen. Well, at that point, we don't want the land to sit there subdivided. So we do what was called the reversion to acreage at that point, where the city would end up preparing those documents, hire a surveyor or however it would be at that time. But the idea would be the cost would be covered based on that deposit. So that way the city isn't held with some sort of useless piece of land that you can't do anything with. Any questions? I'm here to help. I mean, I can go into detail for days, but I think I would probably bore a few people, including myself, after reading this about 4 times. So, but I'm here for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that report, Steve. City Clerk, do we have any speaker requests on this item?
No, Mayor, there are no requests.
Okay. Bring it back to council then. Do we have comments or questions from council?
Go ahead. The lien's on there for 3 years. That's if the property gets subdivided and developer starts to build, does that lien come off or does it stay on there for 3 years? My question is if what I'm getting at is that does the developer, once they get house is built, do they have the ability to get the lien taken off a particular parcel so that they can sell that? Because a lender is not going to take a secondary position. And so it'll prevent the buyer from getting financing.
You're absolutely correct. And so one of the requirements of the ordinance is that prior to any kind of permits being issued, any movement at all, there has to be a replacement security provided. And that is a typical form of a bond, letter of credit, or cash deposit. And those are the mainstream type ones that we would be used to, where that would ensure that the lien is taken off, so that way the land can be financed or move forward with the banking, and then you have the other securities that are in place to make sure those improvements are completed.
Okay, all right, very good.
Yes. I think I'm a little confused. This is for, it's lien on the property, but it also says for infrastructure. How does that, I mean, Mike's question is going ahead. If the houses are built, the lien is removed, infrastructure has to be in at that point, correct? So is he getting the cart before the horse, or am I just not understanding this?
I don't want to answer that cart before the horse thing, because that puts me in a bad spot to be answering. Let me see if I can go back and...
Walk me through that.
Sure.
The map is approved and there's a lien against the property. Next steps is infrastructure, correct?
That would be correct.
Streets, sewer, water, blah, 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 all of that stuff. And then the houses come.
But not in that order.
That's what I want to know. What order is this where the lien is taken off if these improvements are not done?
Correct. So the idea is that a lot of these landowners that have the big parcels, like the farmers, they don't have the wherewithal to go ahead and put up the several $1 million of bond, whatever it is. So that's where the lien agreement comes in place. That allows them to basically have the lien on the property. Nothing can be done on that property. Even, let's take one step back. The map comes to council, right? And it's up to the council to approve the map. The subdivision agreement is in place, which requires whoever owns that land, there's going to be improvements that are being necessary as part of this map. Well, the developer could be just the landowner at that point and says, you know what, I know I'm going to be able to sell this to somebody in the near future, but I don't know who yet. And I don't have that money to do that. So present it to council. Council says, all right, great. You want to do a lien agreement? Okay, that's one of the options, but you're not going to do anything on the site for at least 2 years that the improvements are necessary. Mr. Developer, Mrs. Developer says, correct. I just want to get it. I want to get the map approved so I can make it more of a sellable piece.
Okay.
So now that developer comes around and finds a home builder, whoever could be doing that out there, and says, I've got a sellable piece of land. However, there's a lien on it before, and per the ordinance, prior to them, the city releasing the lien, a new security has to be provided. And that new security would be in the form of a bond, letter of credit, or cash deposit. Nothing has been constructed yet. No improvements, no houses, no permits have been issued, absolutely nothing. Now, it's just basically a replacement. It's almost like if there was a home builder that put bonds in place, they sat on it for a couple of years, I'm not doing anything with it, I'm going to sell it to another person. It's basically a replacement of bonds. But in this case, it's a lien to a bond.
Okay.
Does that help out, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
I have the short answer to that. It's so a property, because I'm starting to see more of it happening. It's so the property owner can subdivide the property to then sell it to the developer.
Yes.
And get the subdivision recorded so that they can sell it off.
Carts and horses and all of that good stuff.
I'm just an engineer, and it takes a while for it to come out, you know? So, sorry.
Good explanation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I think that we're showing that we're trying to encourage development. And so we're making things a little more flexible because people just can't always come up with the cash.
You're absolutely
Essentially
correct.
what we're doing.
Yes.
So, thank you.
And I think there's still, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but there's still a lot of protection in place for the city after working with the city attorney's office. I mean, I think this is a really, really good opportunity for the city to see.
Thank you.
And I would certainly agree with that. I think anything, and we've talked about this before, anything that we can do to facilitate and make the process easier and more attractive to potential development, it's all going to help the issues that we discussed with our budget problem. So we've got to be doing everything that we reasonably can to facilitate getting those projects located here and underway so that they can be beneficial overall to the community. So that's all the comment that I have on it. If there are no further comments from council, I'll entertain a motion. We have recommendations 1 and 2 in the staff report.
So I'll go ahead and move that we move forward with both recommendations as they read in the staff report.
Second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Steve, for the report.
I'll need to read. Yes. The ordinance reads, an ordinance of the City of Hemet, California, amending Section 70-224 of Article 8, Security Improvements of Chapter 70, Subdivisions of the Hemet Municipal Code relating to cities' acceptance of lien agreements as securities for subdivision improvement agreements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 10B, City Attorney Vale will give us the staff report.
Mayor and council members, one of the council's future agenda items for some time now has been to have a policy for the city seal and logo. And for some time we originally thought we would incorporate that into the protocols. The more I looked at it, the more I thought we needed both an ordinance and a resolution. And then if the council wants to impose special rules upon itself with regard to the use of the seal and protocol, it can come back, or the seal and logos, it can come back and do that in the protocols. So what you have tonight is an ordinance that you can think of as the external policy that applies to everybody outside of the city, and a resolution that adopts an administrative policy that applies to city staff, management, council on the use of the seal and logos, unless and until the council decides it wants to impose special requirements on itself in your protocols down the road. What the ordinance does is essentially make it illegal to use or try to copy or put out in the public for any person the use of the city or seal or logo. It does authorize the city manager to adopt administrative policies. That administrative policy will also include the process by which individuals or community members who want to have temporary permission to use a city seal or logo can go through that process. That's embodied in the resolution, along with procedures that apply to city staff on how we're going to use the logo. In gist, the logo is only supposed to be used for official city business. And even though the city seal and the logo are protected by common law and state and federal trademarks, we have a hard time enforcing that unless you go through a civil action. By adopting of the ordinance, we've done a couple things that we can do. We can enforce misuse of the seal or logo as a misdemeanor, or we can also pursue a civil action that sets up the ability to send a cease and desist letter, and I think better protects from outside abuse of the city seal and the logo. If you have any questions, I can attempt to answer those. Otherwise, that's the conclusion of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we have any speaker requests on this?
Yes, Mayor, there's one request to speak from Judith McPherson.
Hello, my name is Judith McPherson. I was writing a long script of events that happened in my life within the last few years regarding the city of Hemet, the use of the city seal, actions by the Hemet Police Department. I won't go into detail tonight. Thank you for finally addressing this issue.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, if there are no more public comments, I'll bring it back to council. Any questions of the city attorney or comments?
Okay, I guess I'll start again. I'm reading through the ordinance, and you have on page 4, section 2-2A, and I'll go down to line. No, I gotta put my glasses on because I lost it. Page 4, under item 10B. There's language. First, is this language that was taken from other cities' ordinances, or is this something that's all brand new and all the language in here is brand new?
No, we did look at a number of different cities, not only their administrative policies, but what they had in their ordinance, and we borrowed from several different cities on what we thought was the most commonly used language. And then we looked at it to see if it was legal and modified a few things, and that was resolved. We didn't start from scratch.
Okay, so I found it. It's like line 6.5. It says in here, except as provided in this section, no person other than the city of Hemet shall reproduce, use, give away. Who do we what is defined as the city of Hemet? Is it any city employee? Is it any city council member? Is it? I mean, that seems pretty broad, since the city of Hemet is not a person. It's an entity, and so what does that include?
City of Hemet would include the city and the city council as its highest legislative body. And if authorized, city officers and employees, if we look at the administrative internal policy, that clarifies which city employees, officers can use the city seal and for what purpose.
All right. I think that's it. For now.
Okay. I have a similar question in that area. The term give away. If you give a pin, it's in the same area that Michael was just talking about.
Okay.
I believe. Maybe it's just down from there. Yes, no, it's right after the,
Okay.
other than the city of Hemet shall reproduce, use, give away, sell, or distribute. And again, clarification, if we give a city pin to somebody in another, is that what that's not
No,
what that means?
this would be a third party in some way giving away rights that they don't have to the city seal.
Gotcha.
For example, if there was a vendor selling city logo pins that you hadn't authorized, or they were giving them away, that would be a violation of your ordinance.
Or the
City can hand out pins and coffee cups and logos. The city and the city council have the ability to use the city seal for city purposes.
Okay. All right. That clears that up. That's basically all I had. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it's pretty straightforward, except with the elephant in the room is I have coffees every month as a city council member with my constituents. And it's very common in other cities if you Google coffee with council members. And so is this an attempt to try to stop that, or is this for other purposes?
I don't know, you're an elected official of the city.
And it says on here the council. It says city council, but I was just clarifying.
No, I don't believe any council member who is conducting a community event as a council member has the right to use the city seal and logo. Just like if you're sending out a letter as a city council member, that letter is going to have the city seal and the city letterhead. Yeah, not a violation.
Okay. I'm just making sure it's all clear. Thank you.
Mayor, if there are no other questions, I do have one item I did want to bring to the attention of the council to look at. It was